Hello, and welcome to the Off-Meta Umineko Read-Along podcast, the weekly podcast where I guide my friends and first-time readers through my favorite story of all time, the highly acclaimed murder mystery visual novel Umineko When They Cry. We'll be discussing its narrative and themes, and they'll work together with our community to try and solve its various mysteries. Hope you'll join us on this exciting journey as we delve into the Witch's Cat Box. I'm Kyle J, and joining me on our one-way trip to Rokkenjiima, we have our readers, James Capelli, Ben, Hayley, and Becca. Welcome, y'all. So, how was your read this week?
Thank you. Hello.
I will just say, I very much appreciate that I'm the lone person who gets a first and last name, you know?
Yeah.
It's like everybody's got that friend where when you talk about them, you gotta use their full name.
At least you have two names.
It's you. You're the friend.
Exactly. Yeah, it's me. I'm the friend.
It's okay. The rest of us are just like Madonna.
It's because I'm high maintenance, that's why.
Also true.
So, as far as the read's concerned, I was hoping for at least a little more resolution at the end of the first half. I can't believe we finally made it to the first half. Ben, you, me, and Kyle, we've been doing this for over a year now because
Correct.
of gaps that we had to take, and I'm so glad that we got Becca and Hayley involved.
Yes.
But it's just like, okay, I gotta wait another year to get to the end of this fucking thing? Probably not, but I think probably at least until mid-fall before we're done. I'm not surprised that I'm still super confused about things, but it's just like I was hoping to have a little bit more being like, I know what's going on, beyond the fact that I know it's a sci-fi story.
I was eating good this reading. All the blue and red text, I was living it up. I was so excited.
As we're going through that, I'm like, okay, yeah, a lot of this we're putting things together, it's making some sense. And then he's like, they ate bombs, and I'm like, okay.
I mean, I don't think we were supposed to get all the puzzle pieces, but we're getting a lot more.
Yeah.
We have a lot more than we did.
The way that their battle was going, it was like, okay, he wins the first game, right? He figured out the holes in it. And then the second game is very much like, we're gonna glaze past it. He ate the bombs. She just laughed. All right. Okay.
I mean, the beauty of the blue text is that he doesn't have to definitively prove that what he's saying happened. He just has to say it was a possibility that Beatrice can't deny. He's blue sky theorying. He's going full crackpot. He's just pulling anything he can out of the ether that could potentially happen, even if he doesn't think it's actually true. Which, honestly, I respect it.
So long as it's not a witch.
Yeah, as long as it's not a witch.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that.
I was thinking of you, Ben, as I was doing this reading, like, man, he's going to be having such a great time.
Me too. That was my main thought.
And I was thinking of you, Hayley, and going, wow, Hayley must be bored out of her fucking mind.
I actually wasn't.
Okay. Progress.
I know. Thank you. So I actually wasn't. I did, however, get majorly frustrated when they went through it all again. I was like, really? This story was over last episode, according to me. What are we doing? Yeah, but no, I enjoyed it. I don't know if it's just because I haven't been engaged with it for a little while, or so coming back to it is nice, or if I have changed.
Yeah, you just needed a little sabbatical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it too. I don't know. I have nothing else constructive to add other than Beato and Battler going back and forth rapid fire at each other was like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. Just like no holds barred. Bam, bam, bam. Love to see it.
Well, this week, we are finishing off episode 4, Alliance of the Golden Witch, with the Tea Party and question mark segments, and it's about 2.5 hours of the VN, which is videos 72 through 73 of the YouTube playlist. Additionally, we decided to read a few side stories, Bernkastel's Letter, The Witch's Tanabata Isn't Sweet, and Memoires of the Lambdadelta, which is about another hour of reading, links to which can be found in the Off-Meta Discord or in the description of last week's podcast episode.
Yeah, why aren't those in our version of the game?
So, they were not released until the, most recent full episode 8 compilation port, and none of those have been released with English, right? And they're all on, consoles. So you can, go get the Switch version in Japanese and then try and do a hack to add the patch to translate it. And that's why if you see someone's playing it online, that's what it is.
The videos we watched was basically fan translations?
Yeah. The only official translations are the ones that are on the Steam versions, I think.
Okay, so these 3 videos are not pivotal to understanding the story, but they do add some supplemental information.
Yeah. They were originally released as little pamphlets that were sent out at Comiket. You'd have little pamphlets that had side story information. Bernkastel letter was released at the end of episode 3, and the other 2 were released after episode 4.
I want to ask you how important they are, but I guess I also don't want to know the answer to that until we're done.
They're the side stories that people deem worth reading, I would say.
All right.
So yeah, if you have not caught up to that point, go ahead and stop the podcast and catch up before rejoining us. Or if you're just listening to us along for the ride, welcome aboard. Our story resumes on October 5th, the second day. We see the game clock move forward all the way until just 10 minutes before midnight, the end of Beatrice's game. A baffled battler is eating and drinking alone in the kitchen, despite the insanity of the first day. Since the test given by the woman calling herself Beatrice, absolutely nothing else has happened. Not even bothering to inform him if he had passed or failed, she had coldly informed him that Maria was in the chapel and then left. Arriving at the chapel, Battler finds the door locked, but does find a set of master keys on the ground outside that let him return and enter the mansion for the first time since he left with everyone after dinner. Ignoring the burnt meat smell pervading the mansion, he heads to the dining room and confirms the deaths of those who had died in the first Twilight, as described by Gohda and Kumasawa. However, in addition to those 6 who were expected, Battler also finds Maria, lying dead next to her mother's corpse as if asleep. Battler roams the mansion in sadness and fury, searching for his family's killer all night, but fails to find another living soul. Trapped on the island until the storm passes tomorrow, Battler decides to play detective and try and investigate the crimes. Investigating the corpses in the dining hall, Battler supposes that the heads may have been torn apart by the shot of a powerful gun. However, Maria's death is much more curious. Not only are there signs that she died from poison, a gentler death much more difficult to force on someone with no signs of struggle, but she also seems to have been posed after her death, as one would for a loved one. Battler also finds no sign of these supposed pitfalls that Curie and the others had claimed to swallow people up all over the room. However, with his amateur detective skills, Battler's unsure if being unable to find any sign of them is sufficient to disprove their existence in the face of what everyone else had said. Next were George and Jessica's deaths. George, whose corpse Battler had discovered last night, was likely simply shot in the head after being called to the gazebo for his test. Jessica, Battler finds, in her room slumped up against the wall with the off-the-hook phone near her, her head partly blown off like those in the dining room. However, the scene doesn't really fit the way that she had acted or described in the call just before her supposed death. Battler reasons that Jessica must have been attacked by the killer after arriving in her room for the test, but survived long enough to make her call to Battler. Afterwards, the killer must have realized that she had survived and come back to finish her off fully. However, that still doesn't explain how Jessica was able to predict that she would have her head blown open when Battler found her, or that George, who had left for his test after Jessica, was already dead. Curie's body was found in the guest room on the first floor, positioned similarly to Jessica's, collapsed against a wall with a phone dangling nearby. However, instead of her head being destroyed, one of the 7 stakes of purgatory is buried into her forehead. However, given the shape and weight of the stake, Battler reasons it much more likely that Curie was killed with a gun or the like, and the stake was inserted after death. Battler then investigates Curie's claim, just before she died, that she was under attack from a golden thread striking at her through the keyhole. While there did seem to be some gouges in the wood floor around where she had fallen, the door to the room straight up doesn't have a keyhole, or any other hole through which something could pass through from outside. None of it makes any sense. But then again, hadn't everyone said that Kinzo had summoned demons and used magic to kill everyone? If it had just been one person claiming such, you might have assumed they had just gotten caught up in the moment or been mistaken. But no, everyone he had talked to that night had shared the same consistent story of magic and demons. By the time he'd been called down by the woman claiming to be Beatrice, even he had started to believe that she was a real witch who could summon goats to attack him at any moment. Only now, after spending a whole day with nothing supernatural happening, did he look back on everything and think that there was no way any of that could be true.
So, I'm gonna jump in as Team Mystery, right? Team Sci-Fi, Team Mystery, blah, 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 whatever. And, I still don't feel like the blue and red battle that comes later did a great job of, justifying all of this. As we'll find even further into this episode summary. What could have possibly happened to make the entire family fall in the same line, especially with Kyrie, who is probably the most level-headed person on the island, as far as, magic doesn't exist outside of Battler. I'm a little stumped, right? There's not really much evidence of what it could be. Want to know what you guys think.
I'm so glad you asked. I'm so glad you asked. Something that occurred to me as I was reading this, and Battler was talking about how everyone's stories lined up about what they saw, what they experienced. What if they're all on drugs? What if the Rose Garden is like the poppies in The Wizard of Oz, and they exude spores that make everyone hallucinate, and everybody's on drugs? This is now my theory.
Yeah, but then, the common trope is, oh, it's group hallucination, and everybody saw the same thing, which is boring.
Let me clarify. This is mostly a joke.
Oh, good. Good. Because I'm like, that's the kind of trope that I think the story would try to avoid.
It's too late. It's not a joke for me.
Thank you, Hayley. Thank you. I said mostly. It's not entirely a joke, because here's the thing. The first time I ever played... Has anybody else played Professor Layton?
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, but I want to.
I have.
Spoilers for Professor Layton. Professor Layton in the Curious Village. Halfway through that game, I was like,
yep.
These people are so fucking weird.
Yep.
Are they all robots or something? And I dismissed that because I was like, that's crazy. There's no way that's gonna be like the actual reveal of this game, a game based in reality. And then guess what? Everyone was robots.
Everyone was robots.
So, you know what? I'm saying this is 75% a joke. It's still possible. I don't know. I feel like if we are taking it as a fact that they witnessed these things, then what else for Team Mystery works other than everybody is seeing these things because of something shared that made them see it in whatever shape or form that takes. But yeah.
I don't think you're far off. I do think that there is something that is influencing them to make them think that this is happening. I just don't know whether it's coercion or medical. And I think coercion could play a huge part in, like, someone is forcing them to say this thing, otherwise blank. But, like, I don't know what could be worse already, so I'm just not sure. I think my one part in all of this is I'm glad Battler is actually playing detective, because I'm gonna stick with my theory this entire time is that unless Battler sees it, I don't believe it actually happened.
I completely agree with you, to the point where when he's like, I'm gonna play detective, I audibly said fucking finally.
Yeah. The first 4 episodes were all Battler missing all of the action and being told what happened. If Battler can actually be part of some action, that would be great.
Well, with the exception of witnessing the battle between Beatrice and Virgilia.
He wasn't there. He didn't see that. He got told about that.
He's not physically there, but he watches it, right? And he dismisses it by being like, what battle?
He watches it in the sense of Beatrice recreating a story, in my opinion, which is not the same of him actually seeing the Peace Battler seeing it. And I think it's the Peace Battler that matters in the terms of if the Peace Battler sees something, I 100% believe it happened. If Beatrice is telling a story to Meta Battler, I don't believe it. Like, I'm not going to just believe it, I should say. I need to take it with a grain of salt.
Okay.
Because unless Battler is physically in the room, physically Peace Battler, I just don't think that any of this happened how they say it is, but the results of what he sees matches up with the results of the story. Like, it's the same endpoint, but how they got there is 2 diverging paths that end at the same endpoint. But he has no way to prove that they didn't take the same path.
And that has made all the difference.
What do we think would cause Battler's immunity to Becca's toxin drugs theory?
He's a witch.
But then...
They said he's magically immune, right? Maybe that's what it all means.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I honestly think that what Kyle is saying has some sort of credence to it. Like, strength of will is a big part there.
I don't know. There are some very strong-willed people here that apparently are struggling.
Yeah,
but they eventually cave into believing in magic one way or another. Every single one of them. With the exception of maybe Kraus, who has never lived long enough to justify that.
Kraus hasn't lived. Period.
But, like, the only other theory I can really think of is, like, hey, family, we're getting together. We are going to test the kids. I need you to, like, sell this story. And I think, like, this chapter has verbatim the line of, none of you, my direct children, are going to inherit from me, but one of your kids might. And they all would say, yes, okay, I want my child to be the head of the family, so I will play along with the story, because ultimately Kinzo's word is the law. Like, I could see that being a point. To the state of, like, we're gonna get murdered? No, but wishy-washy, plot's gonna plot, things can happen.
Plot's gonna plot.
Maybe none of them are actually dead. And also, like, we've seen magic in Angie's timeline, but maybe that timeline is also part of the mass hallucination.
I think that timeline has so many weird pieces to it.
Yeah.
They also might be different kinds of magic, right? Like, Angie's magic is described as being imaginary friend-based and belief-based. It's possible that there's multiple kinds of magic.
Trauma-based.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, maybe if you believe enough, you don't need to be dosed or hallucinate in order to trust this stuff. Like, what I was just thinking while y'all were talking, I was like, is there any shared experiences where maybe both Battler and Maria are exempt on the island? Because Maria already believes in this stuff so inherently that she doesn't need to see it to believe it. So, like, if my theory were to be true, she wouldn't necessarily need to be part of it either. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is all very nebulous. I'm just throwing stuff at the wall like Battler did with his blue truths.
They all drank tea. Maybe Battler doesn't like tea.
That's why Shannon didn't know what was in it. She couldn't reveal it was actually the secret hallucinogenic tea.
Yep. Secret magic witch hallucinogenic tea.
It was set up all the way from episode 1.
There's going to be stuff that was set up in episode 1, isn't there, Kyle?
Oh, I mean, yes, of course.
Spoiler.
And that's why we're going to begin our great reread next year. It's going on the Patreon.
I don't reread anything. I don't fully read most things.
I will accept that blue truth and move on. At the back door, Battler finds Krause's body, head half destroyed and a stake sticking into his neck clearly placed after his death. Battler wonders if maybe some kind of endoscope-like weapon that could kill people by manipulating some kind of deadly golden thread really might be possible. He's sure the adult siblings would say that you couldn't put it past Kinzo to have made something like that. But after all, no matter how ridiculous such a device might seem, it's either believe in that or accept these murders were committed by magic. Continuing further outside, in search of the rest, Battler arrives at the old well behind the mansion, just on the edge of the forest. Next to it, he finds the corpses of Dr. Nanjo and Shannon, both their heads smashed and a stake lying on the ground next to them. According to what the others had said, the well should lead to a secret underground passageway to Kuidorian, and Battler wonders if that is where the killer and their many accomplices escaped to. However, the top of the well itself seems to be covered with metal bars. While there are gaps big enough to see down into its depths, there's no way a person could fit through them. Given what Kyrie had said about how everyone had climbed out and attempted to escape from their pursuers, Battler assumes there must be some kind of hidden mechanism to open that he simply can't find. Regardless, Battler is determined to break through, and so heads to the garden shed, where Gohda and Kumasawa were found dead, to retrieve some tools. However, with the shutter locked and the key inside with Gohda's body, he would have to find another tool to break down the shutter and enter this closed room.
So, I feel like this is the first time that that when the bodies were found, the stakes weren't actually in the part of the body that corresponds with the Twilights in the epitaph.
Yeah, I think at best there's been like a couple times where the stake was like loose and fell out next to them. Yeah,
it really struck me as I was reading this, but I didn't go back and check my old notes to see. Mm-hmm. But I think there was something slightly different about this one, but I don't know how that's significant.
This one felt rushed.
Kinda. Oh yeah, okay, I could see that.
Yeah, that was my takeaway, especially from looking at everything, where the stakes were. It just happened really quickly, and then again, he hasn't seen anyone this entire time. Battler's the only one there, and there's no one else. Where on Team Mystery, though, assuming no witch's involvement, who did all of this and where did they go? I think that second question matters a lot.
Yeah, especially in the context of a later red truth we get at the end of this episode.
So And I guess the third question to tack on to that is, what is the purpose of the stakes if they're not going to be put in the correct body part to show off the epitaph?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that's why it struck me, because I was like, well, I don't know which Twilights these are now.
That's a good call.
True. Although I guess you could check the end credits. I think they say exactly which Twilight is which in the end credits.
They do, but that's not the point. The point was, I didn't know which ones it was just from like visual, which is what I've paid attention to the epitaph. Like it's
yeah, I mean, and that is clearly important to whoever is doing this, right? I mean, they usually don't do this kind of thing. They're usually pretty careful about having it match up, or at least close enough where they can justify it after the fact.
Yeah.
We had some times where it's like the order of the deaths didn't quite match the order of the Twilights, but
yeah,
never off by this serious degree.
Do we take this to mean that maybe Beatrice has given up on her resurrection?
Ooh.
Because we've been seeing a lot of like doom and gloom from her.
Sloppy work.
Yeah, not even that. I mean, yes, but like she's also kind of like resigned to her fate. She's like, I don't want to be in this fucking game forever, and I know that there's no winning for me. Like she is almost ready to die. It seems like, I don't know, the end of this episode throws that into question a little bit.
I think it's a ruse.
But here's the thing, like, almost everyone in this particular iteration is killed with a head wound.
Yeah.
Including Gohda and Kumasawa. So I wonder if that means Beatrice is like, I don't give a fuck about the ritual right now. Maybe she's just going through a phase and she'll come back stronger in the next one. But like, I kind of read that as she's giving up a little bit, and like, what's the point of going through these ritual motions because I know it's not going to work, kind of thing.
I see that. I kind of agree with you, Becca.
I think it's a ruse, and I don't think it's a ruse for Battler. I think it's a ruse for one of the of either Bernkastel or Lambdadelta.
Huh. Okay.
Interesting.
I think it's a disarming tactic. Right? She knows that Lambdadelta has her thumb on her, and she either knows off camera from what we've seen, or she suspects that Bernkastel wants to get out too, and she can't just brute force her way, she being Beatrice, can't just brute force her way out of this whole game. So the, I'm done, but the game isn't over, I'm just stepping away indefinitely, and okay, now we're battling, I don't really care, okay, I'll ham it up for you, ha ha, I'm evil. Like, I take that as like she's got, it's games upon games. Right? If Chapter 3 taught us anything, it was that she is willing to take the long con.
So, yeah, I hear you, and I see what you're saying, but I think with the way that the episode itself ended, so before we get into this tea party stuff, she, and maybe this is all just her acting, but she genuinely seemed like she wanted Battler to recall something important to her, and that she was willing to hand over the win to him if he could recall that. So maybe this whole fourth episode and the kills in it have been deliberately sloppy so that he could legitimately win, but she was letting him win all along. And she really had more faith that he would give her the answer she wanted at the end of this one.
I could see that. I could see all that, yeah.
Also, going off of that, it's been, like, for us, it's been like a month since we read the last section, the last time we recorded. And it's been a while, but at that point, Beatrice was inner monologuing to herself with no one else around about how sick of all this she was and how she felt trapped. And she could be playing the long game and also be kind of giving up at the same time. Like, I think both things can be true.
The most convincing lies have a little bit of truth.
It's true.
So I wouldn't be surprised if a little bit of all of that is happening with her.
Before you carry on to talk about searching for tools, do they really not have angle grinders in the 80s? Like, why did he struggle so much with this? I'm pretty sure they did.
Let's see. When were angle grinders invented?
I don't think the casual family, like even a rich family, would just have one on hand. I don't know, unless you like have a wood shop.
The high-speed angle grinder was invented in 1954.
They definitely had angle grinders.
Well, then there's no excuse.
But I mean, they have a whole staff. Like, the staff's going to just make sure they're equipped to take care of everything. It's an island. It's like, it's remote. They would need stuff on hand rather than having to ship stuff in. And they're wealthy enough that they could do it. And like the Urashiramias aren't gonna give a shit about like what tools there are there, but you know, their grounds team would probably have a budget to buy whatever they needed. He should have been able to get in, and I will die on that hill.
Hayley's busting this all wide open.
I don't know. Like, I think you can get to a level of detail to make that excuse to have any tool on the island, and for the sake of the story, okay, no, you gotta have some limits, but like in that context, you could say no. Like Kinzo would just bring on construction teams whenever he needed it, and they would bring those tools, right? Like, when is Kanon ever gonna need an angle grinder? You know?
Listen, you know that you want to see Genji with an angle grinder.
I need that man in a blowtorch mask.
Well, I mean, Battler does speculate that Kanon had access to some kind of acetylene torch, and that was the laser blade that he used to cut the bars to escape the prison. So maybe that's also, maybe there was those things, and they're just down in the Tunnel de Quadorian.
You've got it. Thanks, Kyle. I'm happy now. Kanon had it.
Yeah, I'm sure Kyle is just going to give us the correct answers right now, and just let us not have to worry about it. I'm sure that's what he's doing.
Searching for such a tool in the boiler room, Battler finally discovers the source of the smell permeating the mansion, Kinzo's corpse. Stuffed in the boiler and burnt to a crisp, Battler can only tell that his corpse is very likely Kinzo's because of the extra toe on each of his feet. Battler wonders if this means that Kinzo was used and betrayed by the real culprit, this person calling themselves Beatrice, but now he will never know. Returning to the garden shed, Battler cuts a hole in the shutter and enters to find Gohda and Kumasawa's corpses still hanging from the ceiling. However, this was not the cause of their death. Both had been shot through the head, and nooses merely held the corpses up at standing height so their deaths could be easily verified from looking in through the window. Battler confirms the key labeled garden shed was still in Gohda's pocket, making this a true closed room. With that, Battler has now confirmed the deaths of 16 of the 18 people who were supposed to be on this island. Only Kanon, whose corpse, according to Kyrie, had fallen down the well shaft as they were trying to escape, remains unconfirmed. However, despite his best attempt with the hatchet, Battler's unable to remove the metal bars covering the well. And yet, if what Kyrie said over the phone before her death was to be believed, Kanon had manifested some kind of red blade of light, perhaps some kind of acetylene torch, Battler speculates, that had cut through the bars like these, like butter. Could Kanon really be some kind of inhuman furniture with such anime-like powers as the others had claimed? Or perhaps he was simply an accomplice of the culprit or the culprit himself. Battler decides to not take the easy route and assume that Kanon to be guilty just because his corpse alone was unable to be confirmed. Just then, we pull out slightly into the meta space, and Beatrice's voice says that it would be all too easy to blame Kanon as things stand, and so she gives us the following read. Kanon is dead. Among the 5 in Kyrie's group, he was the first to die. In short, he was the 9th victim. Beatrice's voice cannot reach this piece version of Battler, but it did reach you, right? Catching up with the Battler of the present, we find him contemplating everything he's seen and everything he's heard. It was all simply incomprehensible. Had all these magical events really happened in the short time period between last night's dinner and being called out for Kinzo's test? By now he was simply exhausted. If only the witch would just show herself and kill him and be done with it. Deciding to return to the guest house, Battler passes through the foyer, and just as the clock strikes midnight, stares up at the witch's portrait and contemplates the many mysteries surrounding the supposed witch. Peace Battler demands that the witch show herself and fight him. And just then, in the meta world, Beatrice and Battler finally begin to face off against one another once again. Beatrice says that she gave Battler a whole day to fully exercise the rights of the human side to investigate the crime scene. She then says that Angie was a brilliant trump card of Lady Bernkastel's, as only Angie's sacrifice could have given Battler the hatred and tenacity needed to actually kill her. Seething with rage, Battler demands that Beatrice never speak Angie's name again. He will blast away all witches, magic, illusions, and delusions, and take his family back. This is the first and last wish of Beatrice's that he will lend an ear to. He will kill her.
I really enjoyed that Beatrice kind of just gave him this time to do what he wanted. I think it was an interesting play, but also I just love liminal spaces. Like, I love the thought of wandering around this empty mansion full of dead people and just kind of trying to figure out what's going on. Like, it feels very Dawn of the Dead or something like that, where you're like in this gigantic place with no other actual living creatures but you, but there's still danger, but you don't really know where that danger is going to come from. I don't know. It was very atmospheric the entire time he was investigating these deaths, and that has nothing to do with anything. I just really liked it.
No, I liked it as well. And you saying that and like the liminal spaces and stuff. So there's an RPG out there called Home, and it's Doug Levandowski, who is a friend and colleague. I've edited some of his stuff before, and it's a really I was involved in a playtest for this, and in the scenario that we did, we were a team, like an actual corporate team. You build all this like lore for your team yourself. And we were on an offsite, and your part of the game is that you actually draw this house as you're exploring it, and that it's a horror RPG, so all kinds of things can happen in it. And this feels like that it would be a great scenario for that RPG to be able to explore.
Quick aside, I just searched Doug Levandowski, which brought me to a Board Game Geek profile on him, and the picture that either he chose or someone chose for him is a little cursed.
I don't know if I've actually seen his Board Game Geek profile. I need to go take a look at that.
I'll share it. You guys can look at the picture. It's very silly.
Oh yeah, if it's silly, then he almost definitely chose it himself. Yeah, he definitely chose that himself.
Oh, that's very good. I love that.
Doug has been on other off-meta content on the main off-meta players channel. Yeah, for Kids on Bikes, like version 2, I think it was. Tyler interviewed him.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's a good friend of the channel. I'm sure that we could use his likeness from his public profile.
Well, I'm sure he's listening right now. So if you're listening, just comment down below.
Yeah, this is a good scenario for Home. You should write it and do a card pack for it, Doug. What did I actually interrupt us to say, though? What did I interrupt us to say? I think it was just about the time span here and how that plays into the possibility that Beatrice truly has given up, because she'd killed everybody by the end of October 4th, whereas normally doesn't it normally take until the end of the second day?
Yeah, usually there's deaths leading pretty close up to midnight on the second day.
Yeah, so for Battler to have a whole day, it was a little bit jarring at first. Like, and trying to imagine a 17-year-old on an island having to see his family dead over and over for a whole 24 hours. Man, that is horror.
Yeah. This is also part of why I said it was rushed for some reason. Like, this is the first time that we don't wake up on the second day. Normally we wake up on the second day and 6 people are dead from the first Twilight, and the rest of the second day...
Right, yeah, usually all the deaths happen on the second day, yeah.
Yeah, and all the rest of the second day is people getting picked off one by one. In this case, they didn't even get to sleep before the first Twilight happened. This happened in the dining hall during dinner, after they had sent people away, when people were just talking. That's when the first Twilight happened, and then everything else up until Beatrice disappeared from talking from Battler, from the really cool scene when she's on the top and he's on the bottom.
We could all agree that she's on top and he's on bottom, yes?
That was all, like, in the course of, 4 hours, maybe? Like, I think that was in the course of 4 or 5 hours, and then he just has a full day of exploring. And again, it's why I think it's rushed for some reason, and something is different with this episode, and I just don't know what.
She's given up.
Maybe.
With a flash of light, the two of them suddenly find themselves in the Rose Garden of the Golden Land, where their final battle finally begins. Battler says he'll take the first move. He'll go back to the very first game and explain everything with his blue truth. Oshimiya Kinzo is already dead. Therefore, the true number of people on this island is 17. By adding an unknown person X to that, it becomes 18 people. By supposing this person X exists, the crime is possible even if all 17 people have alibis. By this, even though the number of people reaches 18, it is still possible for Culprit X to exist and carry out the crime, even if all 18 people seem to have alibis. Wow, that was repetitive, Battler. Alright. With this blue truth, prospectively solving the entirety of the first game, a long blue spike falls from the sky and painfully spears Beatrice's foot. However, Beatrice says this is not enough to explain all of the mysteries in later games. For example, at the end of the second game, George, Gohda, and Shannon die while sealed up in Netsui's room, while all the remaining keys that could unlock it were in Rosa's hand. Even if Culprit X exists, that does not explain this locked room. Battler responds to this by claiming that it's possible that Culprit X possessed a master key, but Beatrice refutes that with the red, all the master keys were under Rosa's control. However, Battler finishes off the second game with the theory that Aunt Rosa was an accomplice to the culprit. Aunt Rosa handed over the key to the culprit by some method, assisting in the locked room murder, and after that, she retrieved the key by a similar method.
It's an interesting theory, this whole accomplice stuff, right? Because it feels like, yeah, that's clearly gotta be what it is if it's Team Mystery. And that can easily be crushed by a red text of, she had no accomplices.
Sure.
But that's never come?
It's never come. And the whole, like, oh, she's not trying her hardest, she's really given up, is the whole plausible deniability that comes into this end of the questions arc, especially with what Lambdadelta says at the end of the chapter as well. And so it's like, you have this big whole battle, but you're really left with this feeling of Beatrice did not give it her all. She was not here in this part to win. The game's going to continue in some fashion. So is that really part of her giving up? Is that part of her doing exactly what Lambdadelta wanted at the end of chapter 3? And it's a little frustrating as a reader because you, like, empathize with Battler, the human, the victim in this situation, being like, I want this guy to win, kind of. But it's kind of like this give and take, right? One hand says stay away, one hand says keep coming in closer. It's an interesting narrative tool.
Yeah, I agree. I also think it's interesting, and I'm not going to talk too much about like what I think of the red and blue truths, because over the course of what Kyle's about to read, those are going to change monumentally.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not, like, let's not even talk about that until all of them come out. Like, just because you're about to go on a roller coaster, listener, if you did not read this. So just let him read it, and I'm not gonna talk too much about that. But what I do think is what inspires the truths is that Battler is now willing to blame his family, which was something that in the first 2 episodes especially he was not willing to do. He was like, there has to be some outside force. And now he's like, well, now I have to throw out, like, Rosa could be an accomplice, Ava could be an accomplice, etc. Because he's actively seen things that they have not been truthful and are, like, hiding their true selves a lot.
Right.
So now he has to be willing to put his family and the servants and those under the spotlight, because otherwise he has no footing to stand on, and which is a far cry from the first 2 episodes.
Well, chapter 2 specifically, where he said, I refuse to even consider them as...
Right.
Yep. And now he kind of has to if he wants to be able to refute Beatrice, because I think one thing we all know is that the family has to have played some part in this. I don't think that there's any world that I can envision where all of the 17... I'm not including Kinzo. Kinzo doesn't exist.
Right.
All of the 17 are completely innocent. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Like, can you imagine if it had come out, like, it was Culprit X? Like, how unsatisfying would that have been?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it was Steve. He was just there the whole time.
Damn, Steve. The worst. I wouldn't want to meet Steve in a liminal space.
Hell no. So, I am very angry at one of these red texts, and I'm curious to know if all of you noticed, and if you will notice.
I'm excited to hear which one it is.
Uh-huh.
Also, remember, I read this at least 3 weeks ago, so...
Yeah, true.
I read it 3 days ago.
Yeah.
No, yesterday.
You mean across the whole chapter, not just what Kyle's gotten through so far.
Yeah. We would like to have some time to, like, you know, really delve into these red statements. Like, and that's kind of what we're planning to do for a post-message bottle episode, is maybe kind of go back and give people's thoughts. Like, right, this is the last time to try and solve this before we go into the answers arc, right? So I at least want to get a snapshot of, like, hey, what do you really think is happening here at this point in time? And that's kind of something that's going to take, I think, more of an in-depth discussion than we can really get into in one of these, because I have to read so many colored statements right now. So let's keep moving. Colored statements just seems wrong. I shouldn't have said that. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like the wrong way to say that.
I was thinking that, but I was like, I know what he means, because they are actually in a different font color in the document.
Mm-hmm.
But it does sound really weird.
Yeah, I'd read a lot of red and blue statements. Battler then moves on to the third game, where he claims that all the murders leading up to Dr. Nando's death can be easily explained with Eva as the main culprit, as argued during that game. As for the final riddle as proposed through Eva, the murder of Dr. Nanjo can be explained with an 18th unknown person, X. Beatrice instead turns to the mystery of the disappearance of George from the guest house and says in red that George did not go down the stairs of the guest house. Battler sees no issue with George having jumped out the window in the hall, the grass and rain outside erasing any traces of his flight. When Beatrice repeats the previous red truth, all windows and doors leading to the outside were locked from the inside. Furthermore, it is impossible to lock any of those from the outside. Battler simply repeats his theory from that game in blue. In that case, everything works out as long as someone locked the window after George Aniki escaped through it. Unable to remove that blue stake still spearing her foot, Beatrice continues to howl in pain. With no red truths forthcoming that deny Battler's theories, only the fourth game remains for Beatrice to prove the existence of witches with. Battler's theories for the vast majority of the crimes are simply that the 18th person X went wild with a gun and killed everyone. Regarding the pitfalls, there are every chance that pitfalls truly were hidden there, and it's also possible to explain them with Kirie-san's theory hypothesizing the existence of a poison dart shooting device X, which can knock a person out instantly. The murders of George Aniki, Jessica, and those who escaped through the dungeon can also be explained with guns, just like in the dining hall. Beatrice finally begins to strike back at Battler's claim that there is an 18th person on the island. Since the foundation of the inclusion of an extra person is based on Kinzo already having been dead, how does he explain how everyone saw him alive? She even gives the red truth. All those present at the family conference acknowledged the existence of Kinzo. Battler speculates that grandfather was a different person, a body double, a different person with the relatives mistook for grandfather. But Beatrice responds with the red. No person would mistake Ashiramiya Kinzo by sight. No matter what the disguise, they would not mistake Ashiramiya Kinzo by sight. This leads Battler to the theory that the game setup is not consistent across all games. By declaring with the red truth in the second game that the number of master keys was 5, then in the first game the number was more than 5, you changed the premises of the later games. In the same way, there's the possibility that Kinzo's life and death status was changed for the fourth game. Therefore, Kinzo's existence in the fourth game does not serve as proof that he existed in the previous games. Therefore, even if we suppose that the 6 murders in the dining hall were carried out by grandfather himself, it doesn't create any contradictions. However, Beatrice quickly counters with the red truth. Kinzo's life and death status are the same at the start of each of the 4 games. The setup was not different for the fourth game alone. Battler tries to get Beatrice to say in red that Kinzo is alive at the start of all games, but she refuses. The spectral form of Kinzo appears in front of Beatrice and then transforms into a great black dragon protecting her. However, Battler is not shaken. He asserts the following to Kinzo. My theory is that Kinzo's name is passed on as the title of the Ashiramiya family head. Ashiramiya Kinzo was already dead, and he passed his name on to someone else. Everyone acknowledged it, and therefore, all those present at the family conference acknowledged the existence of Kinzo. There wasn't even any need for this person to disguise themselves as grandfather, because everyone recognized a new Kinzo. Therefore, they didn't actually mistake Kinzo by sight. As long as the preceding theory is not disproven, nothing can change the fact that you're dead. Battler demands that this Kinzo before him repeat that not one person present had multiple different names, and when he can't, lays out his blue checkmate. Ashiramiya Kinzo was already dead. Yeah, poor old you. Whenever we find your corpse, it's always completely burnt. That was a gimmick to prevent discovery of the fact that time had passed since your death, and you passed your name on to someone else. With this theory, even though you are dead, Kinzo can still appear at the family conference. Numerous blue stakes pierce the ghostly dragon, and with one final cry of Beatrice, Kinzo bursts into gold and fades away.
Here's my theory. The new Kinzo is Battler. Battler done it. It's been Battler the whole time.
Ooh.
I don't know how this would actually make sense, but he's the one that's standing at the end of all of this most of the time, right?
Is this true?
Well, every time.
Battler hasn't died except for at the end of the game.
And of all of the grandchildren, who is the most likely to inherit Kinzo's name? Who keeps getting compared to Kinzo throughout the entire narrative by his family members and by Beatrice?
I think my thought was Maria for sure. So
the humans compare him to Maria, though witches compare Battler to Kinzo.
Yeah.
I would love it if it's Maria
That's fair.
too. Yeah. So, Battler done it. He's Kinzo, and he's been killing everyone the whole time, and he's not even aware. How does that work? I don't know. It's a blue truth. I don't have to explain myself.
Hallucinogens.
that's your blue truth, and you're sticking with it.
Devil's proof, I don't have to explain, yeah. Finally, Battler moves on to the heart of the matter. It's time for him to finish this game and take back his family and return to Angie. Beatrice yells for Battler to go on then and kill her, and so Battler lays out his final blue truth, explaining the last remaining mystery. George Aniki and Jessica's deaths in the fourth game can also be explained by Culprit X, and the 5 who escaped from the dungeon who were killed, and the 2 in the guarding shed, and Maria in the end. All those can be explained with an 18th person X. There's nothing strange at all. This concludes the explanation of the culprit with humans for all games. Beatrice, this here is checkmate. Several more blue stakes rain from the sky, skewering Beatrice all over as she screams in pain. Yes, these will kill her if she isn't able to refute them. Beatrice turns to Battler and gives one last argument. How does Battler explain all of the open displays of magic that she has shown him and others throughout these games? However, Battler simply reminds Beatrice of the rules of her game. Magic can't be used to prove itself, as that would cause a stalemate. In this Brawn Tube trial, any magic merely seen by others can be dismissed out of hand. Beatrice laments that this was a game without victory for her from the beginning, that absolute determination to win for certain had once been hers, but now had been lost and taken up by Battler. No longer was she reflected in Battler's eyes as an opponent, an individual. She laments having thrown away her chance at victory in the third game. However, that would have been a false victory, with Battler still not seeing her true self. With Beatrice's body held aloft by the many stakes driven through her body, and rain beginning to fall, Battler asks her if she's done. He says that she isn't a woman who will let things end like this. Beatrice calls him unreasonable for expecting her to continue on like this, and tells him to deliver the final blow and declare in blue that therefore witches don't exist. However, Battler refuses. This isn't her losing. This is her resigning. And he promised that he wouldn't let either of them run away from this battle anymore. He could never allow the person who killed his entire family and tortured their lives over and over again to flee once again into the vague darkness. He was going to break through all of her illusions, completely, and uncover the truth. Beatrice wonders if this endless torture is really all her endless magic comes to. No, the only end to her being a witch's plaything is to let this battle come to its true, inevitable, tragic end. Battler demands that she, the ruler of Rokkenjiima, face her end with the appropriate majesty. He would allow her to hold nothing back, denying her offer of a false victory, just as she had done the same in the third game. Beatrice cackles and declares that he won't get another chance. Suddenly, all the blue stakes piercing Beatrice's chest are blown away, leaving only the single one left in her foot, representing Battler's Culprit X theory. Beatrice unleashes a devastating red truth. Kinzo was already dead at the start of all games. Thus far, I have been declaring that no more than 18 humans exist on this island. I will lower that by 1 for Kinzo. No more than 17 humans exist on this island. That includes any 18th person. In short, this 18th person X does not exist. This applies to all games. With that, the final blue wedge piercing Beatrice fades away. Battler is back to square one.
So we got the red text. It says no person X exists, which I think blows away a lot of Battler's stance on things. But that on its own, if we don't have a person X and we know Kinzo is dead, who is the person that the rest of the family has been seeing as Kinzo? Right? That's got to be person X, right?
Has Battler seen Kinzo?
Well, so I guess quote unquote person X could be Kinzo's long since dead corpse, right? Which isn't a person, but that is how you justify an extra body lying around, and whoever is masquerading as the Kinzo as the grandfather is within the 18 people.
So I'm assuming that Kinzo's corpse is part of the 17. He's still a person. She doesn't say dead or the status of those people.
She says specifically that Kinzo is removed from the list.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the only time Kinzo actually appears to anyone in the family in front of their eyes during the course of the night is in this last iteration, right?
Kinzo is spoken to by Kraus or Natsui. Now, the key is outside of his study, and at which point I think it's chapter 2 that he's in the garden and Kanon comes and talks to him. And then there's Genji, who talks to him in every chapter, or Nanjo, who talks to him in every chapter.
So could it not be supplemented by the blue truth that Battler speaks, where it's not the Kinzo we're thinking of as in terms of his grandfather, but whoever the new Kinzo is, and we just don't know who that is yet. But I'm curious what Ben has to say.
I agree with that. But I am also going to go back to the theory that I've kind of stuck on since the beginning of episode 4, which if Peace Battler didn't see it, take it with a grain of salt. And the thing is, we're looking at the amount of times that Peace Battler has interacted with Peace Kinzo, and I think that answer is 0.
Well, it's 1. In episode 2, when he goes up to Kinzo's study, he sees Kinzo there playing chess with Beatrice.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I still don't know what to make of that, because we just got a direct contradiction with that red truth that Kinzo should be dead.
Exactly. So that is a good point. Mm-hmm.
So there's something weird going on, and by that point that he goes up, he's already become basically lost the game in episode 2 and becomes furniture. I am very interested to see how they explain that last part, or if they just hand wave it, because Kinzo being there directly contradicts everything. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. That's like the one piece. But like, if you look like during the 2 days that this game is happening, if we ignore that like one piece that I don't necessarily know is there, I don't believe Peace Battler has interacted with Kinzo, the grandfather Kinzo, whatsoever.
Correct.
And that's why I take everything that anyone has ever said about grandfather Kinzo with a grain of salt.
Salty burnt corpse. That's jerky. Jerky Kinzo.
Jerky Kinzo, indeed. Can we make that the title of the episode?
Kinzo jerky.
Human jerky.
That's we'll make merch. Off meta brand Kinzo jerky.
I don't want it.
Make sure that it somehow
burnt to a crisp.
Make
sure that it somehow shows the 6 toes.
It's just a foot with 6 toes. And an enamel pin.
Kyle, you need to start reading. Kyle, go.
Break me off a piece of that Kinzo toe.
All right, moving on. Battler begins once more from the first twilight of the first game. There's nothing strange about the murders of the 6 relatives that were found in the gardening shed in the beginning. The crime was possible for any of those who didn't have an alibi. Beatrice declares this valid and moves on to the second twilight. Evan and Hideyoshi in the room sealed by the chain. She gives the additional red truths. Both deaths are homicides. It is not the case that after the construction of the locked room, one of them committed suicide after murdering the other. Furthermore, the murder was carried out with both the victim and perpetrator in the same room. No method exists for the perpetrator to commit murder from outside the room. Battler gives the theory: suppose the culprit was a human without an alibi, in other words, the dead. Among the first 6 corpses, there were some made unidentifiable because their faces were smashed. One possible theory is that one was actually a fake corpse, and that some culprit X killed those 2 after pretending to be a victim and hiding away. Then, after the locked room murder was constructed, the culprit hid under the bed and waited for all of us to leave. Beatrice moves on to Kanon's death in the boiler room. She gives the following additional red truths. All of the survivors have alibis. Let's include the dead as well. In short, no kind of human or dead person on the island could have killed Kanon. Battler responds that if no one could have killed him, then he might have been the one to kill, meaning Kanon might have killed himself. Battler demands that Beatrice repeat in red that Kanon did not commit suicide, which she obliges. However, she declines to repeat that his death was a homicide. Battler continues, Kanon died for a reason that was neither suicide nor homicide. Though the circumstances are unclear, he died from an accident. By the devil's proof, I refuse to explain what kind of blunder could have led to an accidental death where a stake was driven into his chest. Beatrice declares the blue truth valid and moves on to the deaths of Genji, Nanjo, and Kumasawa in the parlor while Maria sang in the corner. She says that Maria, who was in the same room, did not kill them, and of course their 3 deaths were homicides. Battler responds, we can explain it with the one that carried out the murder being culprit X, who used an unidentifiable corpse to disappear. In the first place, their 3 faces were also pulverized. It's completely possible that one of them was a body double corpse. However, Beatrice says, I guarantee the identities of all unidentified corpses. Therefore, there were no body double tricks. This leaves Battler with a ridiculous theory. Then I can explain it with their simultaneous murders. Each of the 3 had a gun, pointed at one another in a clockwise pattern, and they blew each other's faces off at the same time. After that, Maria collected those guns and hid them. Beatrice enjoys this theory so much and moves on to Natsui's death at the very end. She adds the following red truths. Natsui's death was a homicide. There are no corpses of unknown identity, and all of the survivors have alibis. Battler says you can explain it with an indirect murder by Trap X. Something was done to Aunt Natsui's gun. You can explain it if that was a trap gun, built to send a bullet right into the forehead of anyone who tried to hold it up and shoot. However, the bullet buried into Natsui's forehead was not fired from Natsui's gun. And so Battler responds that there is a possibility that Aunt Natsui was lured out by the letter of unknown contents, and she was called out to the hall. Then she was forced into standing at a specified location at a specified time, and was murdered by some Trap X, which used a gun that had been installed there beforehand. Beatrice calls Battler's arguments absurd, but says that she's impressed and surrenders the first game to him out of respect. As a result, she is once again pierced by stakes of blue truth, and while she is able to remove some of them with no visible wound, she seems deeply wounded. Battler almost feels sympathy for her suffering, but Beatrice confirms that unless he kills her, she will keep him trapped here from his sister for all eternity. Moving on to the second game, Battler and Beatrice have the following exchange over the first Twilight. Someone secretly borrowed Maria's key and secretly returned it to Maria's bag after the crime was over. From the time Maria received her key to the instant that Rosa unsealed the envelope the next day, the key did not pass into anyone's hand.
This was the red text that, really threw me for a loop for this chapter, because I thought that was a slam dunk.
Mm-hmm. That was the one theory that Battler had that seemed really solid.
That was his one win. But, thinking back, this is, I think, something that she was gonna refute, but Ronove pulls her away.
Mm-hmm.
Being shut your damn mouth, you're gonna blow it. But why? If that's the case and then she does it here.
Mm-hmm.
He needed her to give him some hope, I think.
That, or maybe this is incredibly reckless.
Yeah. And her mental state now is very different from where it was in chapter 2.
Yeah, this is the right time to reveal it, IMO. This is a good time to say it.
I mean, we're gonna see more as we talk about more of this reading, but like, we're only just beginning to unearth some of the leads that Beatrice has buried. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we only just discovered there's no more than 18 people on this island was a slight bluff because she could bring that down to 17 and have it still be true. She is playing like 6-dimensional chess.
It's, oh man.
One of which is a meta dimension, yeah.
Yeah. This is like, as you're reading, Kyle, I am just, speaking. Let's get it right. As you're speaking, Kyle, and you said, moving on to the second game, there was part of my brain that did exactly what it did as I was actually reading this, which was like, why am I here? This game is finished. Why are we going over this again? Like, I understand the importance of the blue and the red. I really do. I get it. But oh my God, did we have to reset? Again. And I'm assuming episode 5, we're going to be playing through it again, but with some maybe some conclusions.
But Hayley, we get new little bits of information every time.
I need it by bucket.
Yeah, and so this is why, like, I understand your frustration with the repetitiveness of this, but to me, this is amazing. Like, and I just, like, I like that it is telling a story over and over, but adding new stuff. It's the same kind of thing that any kind of, like, to me, like a murder mystery movie does a lot of times, except for they can't visually show it. They have to talk about it. Like, they can't just, like, show the scenes again, because they have to explain a lot more stuff.
It's like how you can see a situation the same way over and over again in your memory, and then all of a sudden, like, someone else who was there brings up something that you forgot about, and then it completely changes your memory of the thing that happened. I don't know. I do think it's really interesting. I'm kind of with Ben on this one. I like having new wrinkles introduced every time you go over something where you're like, oh, I hadn't considered this before, or I didn't get the whole picture before, and now I'm having new information introduced to me by remembering something new, or by this contradiction that someone else pointed out. I think that stuff's really fascinating.
I do like that, but it is too long for that. Honestly.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like,
absolutely fair.
I totally understand that. It just doesn't seem to, like, bore me and Becca like it does you.
it's not even that it bores me. Like, I'm truly invested. I really am. Like, if it bored me, I would have quit. Like, I really would have. I can't deal with being bored. I can't.
Oh my God, Hayley's a witch.
It's the poison that kills witches. Yeah.
The fact that I'm still here, and the fact that it makes me so frustrated, is why I keep coming back, because I'm having such reactions to it. I'm really invested in it. Like,
you have to figure it out.
Yeah, I've got to get something out of it now. I'm like, motherfucker, seriously?
Counterpoint, I wouldn't let you quit.
I mean, you don't live here.
True, but I do know how to annoy the fuck out of you.
Yeah, Capelli is the Angie. He's gonna be torn into minced meat to make it.
Oh my God.
You'll notice I've never smiled a day in my life.
That's true.
Yeah, boy, oh boy. I am here for it. I am enjoying it in my own fashion. But holy shit, does it annoy me? I have a type.
Fine line between hate and love, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to us kind of doing a more deep dive into trying to solve some of this stuff, because we get so many massive reveals. This one, like the fact that Kinzo is dead, changes so much context from the early games. Like, if you go back, it's like, okay, well, so Natsui said in the first game that she went into Kinzo's room and talked to Kinzo, and Eva did the receipt seal and was like, what, did Kinzo jump out the window? Like, there's all these things you can kind of go back and think about, like, okay, then what actually happened there? Why is this person claiming to have seen Kinzo? Were there other times where people claim to have seen Kinzo?
But Battler wasn't there. Before you go on, while I have a platform, I'm just going to quickly do my 15-second pitch that everyone here should be watching The Residence. That was on Netflix, which is a great murder mystery whodunit that just came out. It's so fucking good.
You know, Emily messaged me yesterday, and I was like, she showed me the trailer. I'm like, the trailer looks mediocre.
It's so good.
So I'm happy to hear some assurance that it is very good.
It's so good. We had so much fun. Everyone in my house had so much fun watching it.
Nice.
But where are you at on Severance, though?
Oh, I caught up. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk about it later.
Haven't started it
I
yet.
haven't even started.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Becca and I can talk about it.
Paradise?
Don't know what that is, but I'm intrigued.
I'm only 5 episodes through. Yeah.
That's a good name.
Oh my god. That's a murder mystery.
I'll look it up later.
Instead of talking about TV, I could tell you all about the wonderful life of being a parent going through potty training. That's where my time has been lately.
Oh.
No.
There is the possibility that the door to the chapel had an auto lock, just like Gramps' study. In other words, it was unlocked before the crime, with a rock or something wedged in so that it couldn't close completely. Then they gave the key to Maria. Because the lock was automatic, it is possible to make a theory where the key wasn't needed. No door with an auto lock exists other than Kinzo's study. The victims locked the door from the inside. One of the 6 was the culprit, and this person killed the other 5 and then pretended to be dead. The 6 were already dead by the time they were discovered. All of their deaths were homicides. All 6 were pure victims. They did not take part in mutual murder. There were no simultaneous mutual murders. There existed humans with no alibi at the time, e.g. Kumasawa-san. If we assume that one such person killed the 6 and then was hiding inside, there are no problems. There was no one hiding in that chapel. Therefore, your killer hiding in the building locked room scenario does not hold. And finally, Battler lands on the insane theory and popular Umineko meme. The food they were given had small bombs in it, which exploded from inside their stomachs. In other words, the crime is possible through Trap X. The details of a bomb they could swallow without noticing and then could blow open their stomachs is devil's proof. I refuse to explain.
Wait, I'm sorry.
We've jumped the shark. We've jumped the shark with this one.
Real quick, before you continue, I need to know which part of that is a meme, or is the entire thing a meme? Like, what?
Mostly just small bombs.
Small bombs. It's just
Small stomach bombs.
What happened here? It was small bombs.
Well, I'm just saying, if Kinzo can afford to have angle grinders, clearly he could afford to have small bombs on his island, right?
Yeah.
It's so funny to me that is the part that's memeable, because to me, the most memeable part of that, to me, is I refuse to explain.
Yeah.
So true. So true.
I think the whole sentence is why it became so funny, but like it mostly gets referenced as like when people talk about like some of the ridiculous theories that Battler has, they're like, oh yeah, small bombs. Or people will say like, well, clearly it was small bombs. It's like the explanation for any mystery that happens in the story.
Clearly it was small bombs.
Yeah. Like 999, small bombs.
See, you know what the thing is? In 2025, I would fully believe that. Like, you could probably ingest a bomb the size of, like,
yeah,
you know, a Tic Tac and whatever. But in 1986, more difficult.
Yeah. And they're not just regular bombs, they're candy bombs. They explode into candy as well.
So true.
Small bombs.
Pinata bombs, even.
I love that. Pinata bombs. That's what I'm going to add to my vocabulary.
Oh my god. I'm adding nothing of this. It is ridiculous.
That's why it's
I
good.
refuse to explain, Hayley. I refuse to explain.
Beatrice is too amused by Battler's theory to avoid this blue stake and decides to move on to the deaths of Jessica and Kanon. Battler says that if the culprit was one of the servants, they could have used a master key. It's not even a locked room. Beatrice has no response and then moves on to the mysterious evil Kanon that attacked Nanjo and Kumasawa after Kanon's death. Battler suggests that if Kanon-kun's death was declared with the red, there's no way he was alive. Therefore, there's a chance that it was someone else in a disguise that would make the group that was attacked mistake this person for Kanon-kun. However, Beatrice says that they would never mistakenly think any other person was Kanon, causing Battler to follow up with, then just like the heredity of Kinzo's name, there's a possibility that Kanon's name was inherited by someone. You could suppose that Kanon-kun was killed and a different person succeeded his name, and this person attacked them. Once again, a blue stake pierces Beatrice and seems to do serious damage despite showing no sign of visible wounds. When Beatrice offers no rebuttal to the blue truth of Battler's that still stands from their previous bout over the deaths of the 3 in Natsui's room, Battler takes the second game. Beatrice is once again painfully skewered. However, she cackles and says it's much less painful than being torn into scrap meat like Angie was, further enraging Battler as they move on to the third game. By declaring Kinzo dead, Battler has denied his own theory for the first Twilight, which had stood until now. However, he says There are plenty of people who could have committed the crime besides Gramps. You could even claim that the adults who were in the middle of the family conference at the time were all in on it and committed the crime together. All 5 master keys were discovered in the pockets of one of the servants. The individual room keys were found inside envelopes alongside the corpses. In short, all keys related to the linked locked rooms were locked inside the linked locked rooms. No key could have been returned from outside the room using a crack in the door, a crack in the window, a vent, or any place of the sort. Then they were killed with poison gas. Even if a key couldn't pass through, gas could, right? The murder was carried out from outside of the locked room. All of them had fatal wounds that appeared to be gunshot wounds. Murdering them from outside of the room would have been impossible. I shall say more with the red. When the 5 other than Kinzo were killed, the killer was always in the same room as them. I already declared in red at the time that there were no suicides. After the murder of each person in their respective rooms, the culprit constructed a linked locked room, but there was no way for the culprit to return the key for the last room to inside of the locked room. But they did manage to return it. The first person to discover the corpse just had to pretend to find the key and pull it from the corpse's pocket. Beatrice is tickled by Battler accusing his own parents of being complicit in the killings and takes yet another hit, now covered in blood. However, she continues to taunt Battler, goading him to finish the job. With the Eva theory still holding for most of the killings in the 3rd game, and the 4th game already covered, all that remains is Dr. Nanjo's death at the end of the 3rd game. If this last mystery is solved, it will mean the death of Beatrice. However, Battler still suspects that she has something up her sleeve, her haughty demeanor contrasting the bloody mess of her body as she continues to clutch her flank in pain. Battler racks his brain over the complex web of red truth spun out over Dr. Nanjo's murder until he finds a gap. Everyone on the island that day was listed in red as dead. However, the time at which their deaths was declared in red was not the instant that Dr. Nanjo died. Strictly speaking, it was in the fight between me and Eva after Dr. Nanjo's corpse was found. In other words, if someone who was alive at that time that Dr. Nanjo was killed died before Eva proclaimed that death, you could sew right through that crack. In other words, it's like this. The culprit was among the people who were not confirmed dead prior to Eva's proclamation of the deaths, and that person had managed to skillfully play dead at the beginning and wait for us to leave them alone. They made us think that they had died, while their death hadn't been declared in red. Then they killed Dr. Nanjo, and, after that, they died for some reason. And after that, Eva declared their death in red. With this final declaration, Beatrice is speared by a massive spike of blue that lifts her up into the air, only for more spikes to pincushion her crucified body. However, even then, she could not die. Beatrice cries and begs Battler to end her suffering. Whereas Battler, having been tricked before, would normally doubt these tears, now they are mixed with the blood-red truth. Battler asks Beatrice what he needs to do to kill her, and she tells him that she will now bare her heart to him. Holding out both of her arms aloft, red light begins to build around each of them. One arm drops as Beatrice loses consciousness and loses its light. The other forms a spectral Beatrice that appears before Battler. This ghostly Beatrice politely says, "Ushime Battler, I will now kill you. And right now, there is no one other than you on this island. The only one alive on this island is you. Nothing outside of the island can interfere. You are alone on this island. And of course, I am not you. Yet I am here, now, and am about to kill you." And with that, Beatrice gives Battler her final mystery. Who am I? As she collapses into Battler's arms, he holds her, and then his piece leaves the game board. As the credits roll, we learn that Ushime Battler died in the 10th Twilight, and Ushime Angie died in the year 1998. Thus ends the 4th game, Alliance of the Golden Witch.
Okay, but, that ending...
More of a cliffhanger than I wanted, but still, okay, entertaining, but, it kind of left me with a sense of, that's it?
Oh, I didn't think so. I really loved it. I thought it was such a great cliffhanger to be there are still many multiple questions open, but not all of them have to do with what happened on the island that day. Who am I is a great question. Who are you, and what is the sin that Ushime Battler caused is another one that isn't talked about at all, throughout this entire reading, but was brought up in the previous reading. And I think those two matter a lot more to the next 4 episodes than actually what happened.
I agree with you, Ben, but I also agree with Capelli. This was a frustrating cliffhanger.
Yeah. What was more frustrating to me wasn't where this ends, but the next, where the tea party goes, what they do with that.
Oh, sure. I agree with you there, but I agree with you where the tea party goes, but I'm happy with where this ended.
I guess, but I thought at least we would reach some conclusion to this game.
No, this is the questions arc.
We did. Battler died, and Angie died.
I understand, but okay. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3 all ended with a very conclusive, okay, that is the end. Like, people are dead. There's no question in my mind that is the end of this game. Whether it's we're seeing the goats and things are getting summoned, people are dying, we're talking about the Golden Land. None of that happens here.
Yeah, Battler's piece just leaves the game board.
And if that's the case, like, I was kind of expecting it to lead into some sort of cliffhanger that's like, okay, but here's what's next. Here is what is to come. And we don't get any of that. So, like, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of I am following this game as each section comes out. Chapter 4 ends, and I'm kind of left with a sense of, like, this isn't satisfying. This isn't a conclusion. This isn't a lead-in to the Answers arc. Like, it was good. I enjoyed the reading, but I feel a little blue balls.
I think it is a conclusion in a sense that, like in terms of the rules that have been set up by this game, Battler has never been under any burden of proof to say definitively how things happened. He just has to prove that there is an avenue to disprove what Beatrice is trying to sell him. So, like, he doesn't have to actually say who specifically did things or what specifically happened in any scenario. He just has to say there's a possibility other than magic.
Yeah, but I think he also contradicts himself on that in this part, right? Like, one of the big things in the speech he has with Beatrice as she's laying there dying, he's like, I'm not just going to let you die not knowing what the fuck actually happened. He literally says, I'm not going to let you escape into darkness. I'm going to find out what happened. I'm going to find out why. Why is this happening? So he's kind of laid down the gauntlet saying, like, I'm actually going to try and solve this for once.
Yeah, which I appreciate, but, like, in terms of the gameplay, it doesn't matter.
I disagree with your point, Capelli, about there's no lead in to the next one. There definitely is. Like, it literally ends with a question, who am I? For us to then answer in the Answers arc. And also that whole, I'm not going to let you die, I need to find out what actually happened.
I guess, but, like, it's been hinted at this isn't the real him, who am I? Like, I don't know.
I can see that. It would have been nice to have a more resonant stopping point.
It's like, it's not something that's been unexplored, right? If the whole idea of, like, Battler might not be Battler was contained within this reading, then I'd be like, all right, yeah, I get it. But it's just a question. It doesn't, like, hint at what's to come, except that we're going to talk about where he's from. You know, we got the first hint of that in chapter, I think it was 3, when Eva calls him out, like, you've been gone for so long.
Right, yeah.
I see your point, but that's just not how I feel.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I overall agree with you in terms of how it made me feel. But on a sort of, if I take my feelings out of it, I agree with Ben and Becca that it leads us into the next episode, and it does kind of have a conclusion of sorts. And you're saying that there's been no hint as to what this whole Battler thing is. And I had already, so with the end of episode 4, before I started reading this tea party section, I had already kind of started to think, what sin? And I have a theory, and it's very unformed. It's very gelatinous right now.
Speak on it.
Okay.
Everyone loves a gelatinous theory.
Everything I've said tonight has been completely unformed. Come on, speak on it. Let's go.
Oh boy. So who am I? So 6 years ago, what was the sin that you committed? Now, his mother died 6 years ago. There was part of me that was like, is she actually his mother? But I was like, man, that makes this sort of sexual undertones really freaking weird. And I cannot deal. But also, like, Oedipus complex is that kind of thing. I don't know. So maybe the author has played on that a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if she's actually necessarily his mother, but I do think that the sin that he committed is related to his own mother's death and abandoning the Ushirimiya family. I think he knew Beatrice as a child, like, and him abandoning the family abandoned Beatrice, and so she has this this wound that Battler has also caused. Even though she, like, I get the sense she loves him deeply.
So the only problem with that is that I think she literally says Beatrice did not exist for Battler 6 years ago. So I think there's something thematically there, but it would have to not be literally Beatrice, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not necessarily saying it was literally her, but that there was somebody on Rokkenjiima that Battler was friends with, and whatever has happened, like like it happens, right? You forget that some people exist. I've done it. And like a few hours later been like, holy shit, wait, that was such and such. Right? You know, when I've passed him in the street kind of thing. So I think there is something there potentially, which is why she's now saying, who am I? Like she's needling. And this whole thing is potentially a way for her to get back at Battler, but also make him remember. And everything that has happened in the games has been some kind of clue to help him remember who she is.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a little bit out there. Like I said, it's very gooey, but
I love this. I love this so much.
We accept goo here.
I find it quite toothsome.
I do wonder as well, with her saying that Ishirame Angie died in the year 1998.
Mm-hmm.
When we met Angie at the end of episode 3, right? Or was it the beginning of episode 4?
When we met her, it's 1998.
End of episode 3.
Yeah, that would have been the time that my guess is that in this real world she jumped off the roof and died.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. But
yeah.
So it's more I'm thinking like are there different, I mean we know that there are different states of this game, but are episode 3 and episode 4 like on the same starting point? And the reason that we didn't see Angie in episode 1 and 2 was because that is it had a different outcome for both of those. So do we have a pre-Angie like timeline and a post-Angie?
My answer is that the Angie that is present in the meta world of episode 4 is the Angie that lives on in episode 3. My guess is that Angie in all worlds probably dies in 1998 somehow, probably from suicide. But the Angie that we see this entire time is so influenced by Ava, and like Auntie Ava, who grew old, was the only survivor of episode 3. And that's why we get the Angie that we see now. But Angie does technically survive in episodes 1, 2, and 4, but without an Auntie Ava.
Mm-hmm.
With no relatives. She is the sole inheritor. It's also possible that Kasumi had something to do with that, but we have no proof. My thinking is that Angie dies in 1998, no matter what the outcome has been so far. But the Angie we saw is influenced by the fact that Ava survived.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree with you.
Beginning the question mark segment, we find ourselves in an unknown fragment. There, on a large bed covered in candy, Lambdadelta and Bernkastel relax and discuss the 4th game. Lambdadelta is glad that Angie was able to bring Beatrice and Battler back to the table, and Bernkastel is annoyed that the piece that she took such care in preparing had sacrificed itself right away. Bernkastel wonders why Lambdadelta is so content given that Battler looks to be completely cornering Beatrice, having solved almost all of her mysteries. However, Lambdadelta scoffs, saying that almost every one of Battler's theories was wrong. That Beatrice had deliberately left wide holes in her bread so that even Battler could find a theory that could fit. Bernkastel is surprised, saying that she thought some of those were correct answers, except maybe the one about small bombs, of course. Lambda says that many of Battler's blue truths weren't even actually valid. After all, Beatrice says that she guarantees the identity of all unidentified corpses, so Battler's theory about Evan Hideyoshi's killer using a fake corpse can't be correct. Lambda goes on to slice up even more of Battler's blue truths. Kanon did not die in an accident. Genji, Kumasawa, and Nanja were not killers. The thing that shot Natsui wasn't a trap, it was a real shooting murder with a gun raised and trigger pulled. When the 6 were murdered in the chapel, the culprit was inside the chapel. The only one who can go by the name Kanon is the person himself. No other human can adopt that name. And, after the Master Keys came into Rose's control, never did any of them ever leave her hands, except for the time when she lent one to Battler to unlock Natsui's room.
So if that you could say that about Kanon, how do you say the same, like differently about Kinzo?
They're not, and I think that's part of it.
I mean, the red truths aren't like, it's not saying it's impossible for Kanon, it's more saying it just isn't true for Kanon.
That is not what happened, is what this is saying.
And also, if you think about it just like logically, it makes more sense that a servant would not need to pass their name on, but the head of a very powerful family Might.
I agree with you, except that he's more than a servant, he's furniture.
Fair.
Oh, well.
More than a servant, eh? This was the last of the red for this.
Yes.
For episode 4. So, and the red that annoyed me was in this very last section. Anybody
Okay.
guess which one it was?
Is it Genji, Kumasawa, and Nanjo are not killers?
Yes, exactly. Kumasawa done it.
Kumasawa done it!
Oh. No, Kumasawa didn't do it. They're not killers.
I know, I'm so mad. I was so mad when I read that. This just destroys everything.
That's very funny. I didn't even think about that. I don't know. This backs up me saying that Nanjo is actually the hero of the story, so I'm fine with it.
Clearly, Maria done it.
Yeah, it doesn't destroy Maria done it. Maria done
Yes.
it.
Ah.
Maria could still have done it.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. I was really hoping for like a Kumasawa Mario, young and old, like buddy cop, but not cop, buddy killers. There we go. That's what it is.
Buddy killers. We all love that genre of TV show, the buddy killers.
May December joint kill team.
Having completely shredded Battler's explanations for both the first and second games, Lambda says that Beatrice was just pretending to be cornered and tearfully giving up her final riddle. No, she says, Beatrice clearly only revealed one of her 2 glowing arms of magical secrets that made up the heart of her mystery. Lambda taunts Bern with a terrifying penalty game and clutches her and pets her like a cat. While Bernkastel is betting on Battler's victory and Lambda is betting on a perpetual tie, no one is betting on Beatrice to win. After all, according to Bernkastel, the Witch of Miracles, her chances of winning are 0. And according to Lambdadelta, the Witch of Certainty, that is certain. And with that, we have completed the question arc of Umineko When They Cry.
Do we need like a fanfare or confetti or something?
We do.
How about a witch laugh? I can put the witch laugh sound effect here.
Witch laugh, but as a trumpet.
Ah.
So we can officially start Umineko.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yes, now we can officially start Umineko.
Finally.
No, so
Yeah.
A whole year of prep work.
we are definitely entering a completely different phase of Umineko. The question arcs can kind of be seen as like their own package, right? I really do think the author kind of intends that you could just look at the question arcs and get everything they want to say out of the story from that. I really do. The answer arcs, also known as the scattering, are really meant to be, there's a lot more story, obviously, but it's a lot of, in terms of like, if you're just looking from a mystery perspective, it's kind of meant to be hints in a way. And even thematically, I think a lot of the stuff can be found in the question arcs. I think it's a really masterfully put together thing. I don't think the question arcs get enough credit for like how much is packed in there once you like really take the time to dissect everything. That's why it's been really joyful to kind of go back and prepare this, because I've gotten to like take a really like deep read at a lot of this stuff and really appreciate some of the things that y'all will only get to appreciate when y'all go back and read these things as well.
When?
Yeah.
I am excited to look at them with hindsight goggles and be able to be like, oh my god, I understand now. But
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do with a murder mystery.
yeah.
Like The Residence, which is just now on Netflix.
I'm worried that there's just too much detail for you to remember, like all the, oh yeah, that was a good hint or whatever, especially with like how spaced out we're doing the reading for the podcast formula.
It's a really good thing I take detailed notes.
It's a really good thing we have all of Kyle's outlines that we can just read through.
I was about to say the same thing. It's a good thing Kyle takes good detailed
Isn't
notes.
it a really good thing that we have a whole playlist on YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going through this again.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, if you're listening to this Umineko podcast, you should check out our Umineko podcast on YouTube.
Exactly. Link right in your address bar.
That's a great plug, Ben. Next week, we'll be doing another message bottle episode for episode 4, where we're going to be going over all of the community thoughts and theories. So if you have anything you want us to talk about, or any other comments, please get those in on one of the YouTube videos or in the Off Meta Discord as soon as you can, so that we can incorporate it into that episode, as we're going to kind of go back and look at episode 4 as a whole and get everyone's kind of thoughts on on just that. Also, for that, we'll also be taking a look at those side stories that I mentioned that we didn't get a chance to get to. We'll be reading Bernkastel's Letter, The Witch's Tanabata Isn't Sweet, and Memoires of the Lambdadelta, as those are the 3 side stories I think are really worth getting into. So we'll include that into our message bottle episode as well. After that, I'll see if I can convince them to have a episode where we just kind of like get their best chance at like solving everything that we've seen so far, as the story wants you to try and really take a stab at it at this point, I think. And I don't think many people successfully solve it at this point. That is not something I'm not expecting everyone to come out of that and be like, we've got it. But I would love to hear kind of, maybe we're closer on certain parts than we thought. So that'll be fun to see.
You hear that, Hayley? We're all counting on you.
We just need to keep throwing blue spaghetti at the wall like Battler.
And eating it to turn it into stomach bombs.
Yeah. Blue spaghetti stomach bombs.
Tiny bombs. Tiny bombs.
Spaghetti and meat bombs? I don't know.
Blue
spaghetti and meat bombs.
I am only going to be solving the epitaph, not the whole mystery. I feel like they're 2 different things.
Hey, if you wanna crack the epitaph, yeah.
Can I share last thoughts on this whole interaction between Beatrice and Battler before we sign off?
Sure.
Like, I really truly think, like, Beatrice is still in this to some extent based on the last conversation we get between Lambda and Bern. Like, she clearly has not played all of the cards in her hand, but she's also kind of like begging for death. And the way I see this confrontation, especially after the last reading where she's so internal monologuing to literally no one but herself about how fed up she is, how trapped she is, how she kind of maybe wants to die. Mm-hmm. I feel like she is playing the heel here on purpose to antagonize Battler, to keep him ferocious, to keep him attacking her. And to, like, she brings up Angie every chance she gets to just fucking piss him off. Mm-hmm. And I love it. I love it so much.
It's all a ruse. Like, she is still playing the game. Maybe not necessarily like between her and Battler, but like she's playing the larger game that she needs to play for her own safety.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I'm not convinced that she really cares about that at that point, because I do think she feels trapped. I do think that she feels at this point that she is somewhat trapped. She might have a way out, and maybe part of that way out involves presenting herself being backed into a corner. But like, how much of that is true and how much of that is the play? There could be overlap there. We don't know, but I love her.
Same. I've had like 3 thoughts while you were speaking just now. One of them, we are vindicated because Beatrice has clearly come out as like not the actual bad guy. That's Lambda and Bernkastel, it seems like.
Oh my god.
She's not the villain.
We'll get into this next episode with the supplemental readings, but holy shit, have I turned around on some of these witches. Anyway.
Next thing was, I just remembered that there is a line, maybe even like a small conversation about Battler's type being blonde bombshells, and she picked it on purpose, which makes me again think that she knew him when he was part of the family before his mother died. And then
were they tiny bombshells?
Ooh.
Spaghetti bombshells even.
I get it.
Yeah, I want some art. Like, I want a picture of Beatrice with like revealing the breast and it's just tiny bombs spilling out.
Made of meat. She loves her piles of meat.
Oh no.
The blue spaghetti and tiny bomb meatballs.
I completely lost what the third thing was.
All right.
Good.
Sorry.
Well then, maybe you'll remember it next time. But for all of you at home, thank you for joining us, and remember to think off meta.